I had the privilege of performing my Micro ETS procedure on a 16-year-old girl from Charleston, South Carolina, yesterday morning for severe Palmar Hyperhidrosis. She would describe that her severe symptoms she's really had all her life, or as long as she can remember. And whenever her hands would sweat, her feet would sweat, and the sweat would start to bead up on the tips of the fingers first, and then would, after just a minute or so, start to run down her hands onto her arms. It was something that, especially playing volleyball, which she just finished the fall season for her school, can you imagine? It was difficult to hold and handle a ball when you've got wet hands, and certainly taking a test, holding a pen or a pencil be difficult when you're focused and you're trying to answer the questions. Then your hands get really wet, and the sweat drips oftentimes for patients that have the severe hyperhidrosis onto their papers or onto the test sheet or sheets. Beforehand, before coming here, she had tried Carpe lotion, which didn't really do much at all to help decrease or improve her sweating. And it's something that yesterday morning, she had the opportunity of seeing a dramatic change of the severe sweating, and at times really cool and cold fingertips become warm. And here's a close-up of her palms in my office 2 days ago. So it was in the afternoon 2 days ago. As I was talking with her and her father, the sweating would actually start with just light touch of her hands, either the back of the hand or just the front or the palm of the hands or any of the fingers. The sweating started to develop on the tips of the fingers. You can see that. And see the paleness too. There's some paleness of the skin because of the cool, especially the tips. Well, they're pink on the Palmar side, you can see that. But the point is that the changes of color, oftentimes white or sometimes hyperemic or pink or excessively pink when her hands would go through a rewarming phase. Now here's a close-up of yesterday or 2 days ago in my office, where you can see the sweat building up on the tips of the fingers like this, the beading, and then here's her other palm. You can see that. The sweat within just a minute. Look at the close up here of the moisture that just started within about a minute prior to me touching her hand. And here's a side view of her left hand, and you can see the sweat droplets beating up here especially on the fingertips. I did a thermal image of her hands to where color represents temperature similarities or differences. In other words, yellow with this thermal scanner represents the warmest. And so you can see that the center of the palm is the warmest. And as you go over it to even the base of the thumb, it's cooler, slightly cooler. In this case, our hands were actually not too cool at the very beginning of the exam. But there was a little bit of temperature drop from the center palm onto each of the fingers. You can see it's represented by the red here. And in contrast or comparison to her underlying thighs here, you can see the yellow being much warmer than her fingertips. And I'll show you the scan after the procedure, which actually shows that the significant difference here, where the thighs are now cooler than her fingers, each of the fingers and palms, where you can see that it's yellow all the way out to the tips of each of the fingers. Significant difference in temperature. Actually, the temperature of her hands this morning when I saw her and examined her was 97 degrees, and beforehand in the operating room it was 69. This was yesterday morning, 69.5 degrees before I even began the procedure. You can see here's a picture I took of the readout of this is of her right hand there. And here's a picture that she sent to me from about a month or so ago, showing how she just be doing not much and her hands will just, in this case you can see, start sweating. And again, during the severe sweating episodes, her fingers would get really, really cool. And so then yesterday morning, with again the temperature of the fingers, 69, in this case 69.5 degrees before I started, and moist palms. And then I performed Micro ETS procedure on her right side first and left side through only one incision that's 2 millimeters in the underarm. That's very, very tiny without collapsing the lungs. I immediately noticed that the temperature started to rise. And it is something that it takes just moments to change. And afterwards, her hands became warm. And you can see here that the exam of her hands this morning in my office, you can see the palm, it completely dry, even up into the wrist where she has these wristbands, so to speak. But you can see the skin is completely dry and warm. See, each finger, in between the fingers too, because Botox won't stop that sweating at all. And you can see completely dry and warm. And here's again the thermal image showing how warm the fingers were. Here you can see the temperature uniformly warm all the way to the tip of each of the fingers. This is her right hand and this is her left hand. Big change for her, and what I've noticed over the last 20 plus years in performing micro ETS on patients is that patients see a significant improvement in almost everything they do.